This is Hockey Talk, episode 17, where we talk everything hockey. We are recording on July the 11th, and I am John.
Mike.
All right, Mike, let's go. And the first topic for this evening is the NHL draft from a few weeks ago, Mike, especially the first round. We watched it at the same place, we commented on it at the time. The first question, Mike, is do you think this draft was a better than average NHL draft? What do you think?
Yeah, I do. I think that in the first round, there's up to 15 guys. I think that were picked in the first round that could have a good impact with the teams that picked them. So, yeah, I think the draft was actually pretty good, pretty deep. So, I think all of the non-playoff teams were able to get a pretty decent player with their picks.
So, thinking back to last year's draft, I mean, we had Connor Bedard came out number one overall, but the draft wasn't as deep. How many
Right.
players deep do you think was an impact there in the first round? Not 15, I bet.
For last year, no. There was some reaches last year. I mean, when the Flyers ended up getting Mitchkov at pick number 7, and he, in hindsight now, he probably would have went number 2 or 3.
Right,
Um,
yes.
so, yeah, I think after, and I mean, even before Mitchkov was picked, there was a couple of picks that were like a little bit off the board, like um, Arizona at the time had taken a Russian defenseman, Simishev, or I think his name's something like that. So um, he, he was a bit of a reach, and after I think Mitchkov went at 7, it kind of thinned out. So
Right. Okay, fair enough. So we had a deep draft. That's good. Me, Mike, I like the Chicago Blackhawks for some reason. They're not one of my teams, but I just want to see Bedard do well, and he did quite well this past year, but he had about as much help as he had very little help. So
yeah.
they managed to, but the Blackhawks managed to get 3 first-round picks in the top 27 drafted players. Now that is pretty good. Do you believe this was a good move, and do you think this is going to help the Hawks make the playoffs sometime in the near future here?
Uh, well, I mean, yeah, it's a good move, obviously. As far as near future, I think they're still probably a few years away from competing for a playoff spot. The teams that are, pretty much in the top 10 in the West are, not really showing too much signs of slowing down. So maybe one or two of them will, but Chicago's got a little ways to go before they start contending for a playoff spot.
Do you believe that they'll be better next year though than what their record was
Uh,
this year?
well, yeah, I think they'll be better to a certain degree. I mean, they're not going to be able to count on any of these guys they drafted this year. I think to make the NHL next year. I don't think any of them are ready. Um, but they did sign a few veteran guys here in the off season. So yeah, they'll be better, but it'll be marginally better. They're not going to go from second worst team in the league to um, probably much higher than fifth or sixth worst in the league. So they've still got a long ways to go. So marginally better is my prediction.
Okay. Now, did you like the Hawks number 2 pick overall from the draft, Lebshinov? What do you think of him?
Yeah, he's a good pick. However, I really think they should have took Demidov as their pick. I think he's the guy that's going to have um, maybe a bigger impact. And I get that they wanted to fill out their defense core a little bit, so I understand the pick. But I think that they probably should have taken Demidov. I think he's a really good pick, and he should have gone number 2. So
Right. Well, it's been my philosophy for years. You have to take the best available player. Doesn't really
yeah,
matter what you need.
for the most part, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I've looked at it for a long time. I know you agree. Some of our friends agree.
Yeah.
But yeah, they got the 3 first-round picks. They should be somewhat better. At least it gives some hope. I hate
Yeah.
seeing Chicago in the bottom. Uh,
I like seeing Chicago at the bottom. So
well, that's okay. You're allowed to like seeing Chicago at the bottom. They're going to be there for a while anyway. So, all right. Well, the second topic for tonight, Mike, is who do you think could be the biggest steal from the NHL draft? Doesn't even have to be a first round player. What do you think?
okay, so I think, it's a player that I was looking at, and I was hoping that maybe you know the Flyers might have been able to grab this guy in the second round. Colorado took goaltender Ilya Nabokov from the KHL, who went undrafted last year, and he dominated the KHL this year. So I think that he could be the steal of the draft when you're looking, after Celebrini. I mean, Celebrini can't say he's a steal because he was first pick. So
Right.
I think that this has the potential of being a very good pick. Colorado uh, needs a goaltender in the pipeline, and the team is strong. So I don't think he could have gotten picked in a better case scenario than Colorado. So the only thing is obviously the Russian factor. You never really know when some of these guys are going to come over, but I think that he's potentially the steal of the draft. So who knows? We'll see. Maybe 2 3 years if he comes over and he becomes a starter in Colorado.
Okay. Fair enough. Can you name a couple other teams you think did reasonably well in the draft, and maybe a couple of teams that you think were woefully inadequate in their draft?
I think Montreal did well to get Demidov at pick 5. I mean, no brainer there, in my opinion.
Were they surprised that they were able to get him? What do you think?
I would think that they should be surprised because I wasn't expecting him to get to number 5. I at least thought Anaheim would be the team to take him, but they kind of went a little bit off the board with the player that they took. So um, I think Utah did well picking Iginla. I like that pick. Um, and then some of the defensemen dropped a little bit later than what they were forecasted to go. So
Right.
I think Calgary did well getting Zane Parake. He's going to be like he was a big scorer for a defenseman in junior. Just give me one sec here. Um, so I think that was a good pick for them. Also, Buffalo, I think picking Helenus was a good pick. They got him at a good spot because he was forecasted to go a little bit earlier than where they got him. I made a list of a few guys. So the other couple that I thought did well was Nashville. I think getting the guy that they took wasn't as highly rated, but I think he's got a lot of potential. Igor Surin, who played in the KHL and plays a physical game. Put up some decent points over there for a young player. So I think he's got some potential there. And the other one that I had put down, and it was a player that dropped a little bit, was Anton Silyev, who got picked by the Devils at number 10 when he was forecasted to be possibly a top 3 pick. So I think that's a good pick for the Devils. I mean, they're a team on the rise, so their defense is kind of stacked. I mean, right now they've got Hughes, they've got Hamilton, they've got you know who else they got in the pipeline. They've got a couple other defensemen coming up there. So they've got Silyev and Seamus Casey, who's in the U.S. college ranks. So yeah, those are the teams that I thought did well in the draft. We shall see. Who knows? 3 years, 4 years from now, because I think these
Right.
guys will all be playing at that point.
And anybody that did woefully bad or
Um,
poorly? I
well,
know
I
it's hard to
mean,
say, but
it is hard to say. I mean, because I think all the teams that had the top 12 picks did fairly well because there was some decent players. So it's tough to call the rest, in my opinion. But we'll see as time goes on.
okay. All right. Well, let's go on to our third topic for this evening. Well, let's talk some trades. Now, there were some trades in the NHL recently before the draft.
Yeah.
Any that you believe will make an impact and help out some of these teams?
Yeah, I think the Capitals did really well with
They
the.
need help.
Well, you know what? They got it. They made some really good trades. They didn't, in my opinion, give up as much as what some of these other teams were asking for, especially the trade that they got Jacob Chikrin from Ottawa. Ottawa's asking price was through the roof for a while, and then they ended up settling on a second round pick and Nick Jensen. So, uh, great trade for Washington, in my opinion. They also got the goaltender Logan Thompson from Las Vegas. Another good pickup. I think he's a improvement over Darcy Kemper, and he should mix in well with Charlie Lindgren to have a goalie tandem there in Washington because I think they're both going to split time. They also picked up Mangiapane from Calgary for I believe a second or third round pick. So and I mean the guy can score. He's a 20 to 30 goal scorer. So so I think Washington did quite well on the trade front to improve their team for this year and maybe next year.
Okay, well, and for the final topic of this evening, Mike, let's talk about your Flyers. I mean, you didn't really mention them about the drafts, the good or the bad, the trades, the good or the bad. So, how did they do a few weeks ago during the draft and maybe before or after the draft?
Well, I don't think they hit any home runs, but the guy they drafted in the first round, Luchenko, is supposed to be a pretty fast player with a lot of smarts. So I'm really hoping that that's the case. I mean, one of the Flyers' needs is to have a fast forward. Like they generally get a lot of grinders on that team. So to have someone with some speed will be good. How good he actually turns out to be, who knows? I was hoping that at that spot they would have taken Cole Iserman, who is a little bit more of a wild card, just because his defensive play isn't as strong, but he's a shooter. So, um, and that's one of the things that the Flyers always have seemed to lack was having those, top notch shooters. So, anyways, we'll see what happens there. As far as their other picks go, the one that does stand out a little bit is they picked the local guy, Spencer Gill, who was playing here in Moncton and Riverview. So um, he was their second round pick. He's gone into the draft, and a lot of teams liked him. So hopefully he turns out well as also.
Now, are either one of those players NHL ready yet? I'm guessing no.
Oh no, no, not at all. We might see Luchenko maybe next year, and it's a maybe. So he'll be back playing junior hockey this year, and Spencer Gill, this will be his second year in junior hockey, I believe. So they're nowhere as NHL ready, at least for probably 2 years.
So, with these moves, I guess not really going to help them with the playoffs in the near future, but do you believe the team will make the playoffs next year? I mean, it looked like they were going to make the playoffs this year, and then, the wheels fell
Yeah,
off the truck and all hell broke loose. What do you think?
yeah. I think that they are going to be in for a challenge to make the playoffs next year. Mitchkov coming over is going to help. Uh, However, with that being said, if you had asked me last year if they were going to make the playoffs in the year that
Yeah,
just
you would
went
have said
by,
no.
said there's no chance. So the fact that they were close was a bit of a bonus, but I think we're probably looking at about the same thing this year coming up. I would say their chances of making the playoffs might be 20%. So unfortunately, I don't think they're a playoff team yet.
Well, hopefully soon, right? I mean, I want to see the Flyers do well too. I've
Yeah,
because of you, I've watched them
yeah,
over the years. We've seen them play live. I'd rather see them do well
Yeah.
than do poorly. So, and they're
No, no, for
them
sure.
playing better than you thought this year actually hurt them in the draft.
Yeah, yeah, it did. But it's a good sign to see the team improve. I just don't think that they're at the level of being a playoff team yet. The goaltenders are
Yes.
inexperienced. The majority of the defense is inexperienced. So they're a young team, and they had to clear out some salary cap, which due to some bad contract signings. So they're paying the penalty for that. This year, a little bit next year of having salary tied up in dead cap space. So. Um, but yeah, so we'll see what happens. I hope that they contend for a playoff spot. It's always exciting to see your team in a playoff race, but not so exciting when they completely fall apart like they did there this past year.
Well,
So,
not all entirely their fault, but do you think that some of their success was due to Tortorella?
oh, absolutely. Without without John Tortorella, if they had any of those previous coaches that they've had there over the last 3 or 4 years, they wouldn't have even come close. The players have seemed to have bought into Tortorella's system, and he holds them accountable. Like nobody was not held accountable. I mean, he benched Sean Couturier a
Yep,
couple
we talked
times
about it here.
this past year. So I mean, and that's a good thing. Like play the players that are going to help you win the games. Um, and I mean, so with that being said, like I said, I've said it before. I love Tortorella as a coach. He's one of my favorites. So hopefully they can show improvement this year. We shall see, because I'm thinking it's probably going to be probably status quo to last year, just because they weren't able to make really any real upgrades. They still have a couple albatross contracts on the team. Ristolainen is still there, whose contract is not good. Um, some of the cap penalties that they have on buyouts and that sort of thing, they're still paying the price for those. So until we can clear those things off the books there and actually go out and get an impact free agent, it is what it is. So.
Okay, well, fair enough. Well said. Now, is there anything else you wanted to discuss in this episode, Mike?
Not too much, but I did just want to put out there that when I'm sure that you've seen all the free agent
Yep.
signings and all that sort of stuff. So I think a team that did really well for themselves is Nashville, getting Stamkos, Marchessault, Brady Shea. Um, I think that puts them uh, in a good spot to be a contender in the playoffs. So, uh, good moves on Nashville's part. The one questionable move that they made was they re-signed the goaltender UC Saros to an 8-year contract when they have Yaroslav Askarov ready to come up. So, and he's one of the top, if not the top, goalie prospect in the NHL. So, I think what you're going to see there is they're probably going to end up moving him. There's no way he's going to sit behind Saros for 8 years. He's pretty much NHL ready now. So I think they're going to move him for a key piece for their lineup for this coming season to make a push. So it's going to be interesting, but I think he's ready to go, and he's going to be on another team sooner rather than later, I'm
And
sure.
Nashville is going to have something they haven't had in a long time, and that's some scoring depth.
Yeah, yeah. So they look fairly solid, and if they trade Askarov, they're either going to get another good forward or a good defenseman in return. So
Right.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, Nashville may be a better team in the playoffs next year. You never know. We'll have to wait and see. So,
I I think so. Yeah. I mean, they kind of surprised a little bit this year, so I think next year that maybe they win a round or two. So
I had read
depending on the
I had read that Tampa offered Stamkos, and I never actually looked it up again to make sure that they only offered him like $3 million at first.
that's I heard that as well. So bit of a slap in the face to him, I think, if that's the case. So I'm not surprised that he
As
moved
soon as I
on.
read that, I'm like, yeah, he's gone. There's no way he's
Yeah,
staying there for $3 million. Not a chance.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, and one other thing I wanted to add on was I think that Edmonton did very well as well this year in the free agency. They kept a few of their guys that were free agents. They brought in Jeff Skinner, who Buffalo bought out. They got him fairly cheap. I think that's a good move. Helps them with some secondary scoring.
right,
So,
yes.
as an early prediction, I will pick the Edmonton Oilers to make it to the Cup final again next year.
Very tough to
Very
do.
early prediction.
Very tough to do. I mean, here Florida did it 2 years in a row. Very tough. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, we know some other teams have done it, but it doesn't happen very often. So we'll see if Edmonton can do it
Mhm.
again. You like their moves, and they kept some of their players, and it's good. Looks like,
They didn't lose
yeah,
anybody of consequence that I
right.
noticed. So, and without losing anybody big, and they made some gains. I think that I just I think it's going to come down to the Oilers in Colorado in the West, and if I had to pick today, like I said, I'd have to pick the Oilers. So we'll see. We'll
All
see.
right. Well, we will hold you to that. So that's great, Mike. Good job. Well, remember, folks, let us know where we went wrong in the comment section. That is what the comments are for. Please don't even bother liking, sharing, and subscribing, because why in the hell would you? All right. So we'll see you later. Later, guys. Next time.
Later.